Okay, so the first foot that we're going to be talking about is the piping foot. And here is a piping foot. I think it's important that you understand how the foot works. So let's take a look at the back side of it. Now I know that this is a clear, transparent foot, so it's a little bit difficult to see, but right here is a groove, and the groove in the foot is so that the piping can feed evenly through the foot. Now there's another foot that's similar. If you notice, they look a lot alike, and this one's called a welting foot. And the only difference between a welting foot and a piping foot is that the groove in the welting foot is much bigger, so that if you were going to do upholstery or furniture or some other application, maybe a decorative pillow, where you needed a bigger piece of cording, you would want to use a welting foot. But I'm just going to demo with the piping foot. Okay, and my machine is a FOF machine that has the snap-on foot, so I'll be able to just snap that foot on to the machine. And then let's look here. Notice that the groove where the needle can go is a wide slot, and that enables us to move the needle whatever direction we want in order to get it up close enough to the fabric so that the piping stays in place. Okay, so here we are at the machine. I'm going to take this foot and I'm just going to snap it onto the machine. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to take I just cut a piece of fabric here so that I could show you that there's no magic in the width of the fabric. Just be sure you whenever you do this, you cut a strip wide enough that you can work with it. And then I'm going to work the piping, or this cording I have, up into the edge. And then I'll lay it on here and try to make sure that I've got that piping where it runs through the groove in the foot. Okay, let me slowly do that again. But you want to be sure that you have the piping right up into the fold of the fabric so it makes a nice tight fold and you don't get any wrinkling. Okay, then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to move your needle to the left in order to just hit the outside edge. You don't want to catch the piping in with the stitching, but you want to be close to it. Okay, so I've got it moved over, and then let me get my thread to go back behind, and then as you go along, just work your cording right up to the edge of the fold of the fabric, and you can see how smoothly the cording goes through that groove in the foot. Okay, and then when you finish, see how it's nice and tight? There's no wrinkles. Okay, now let's take this over to the cutting table. Okay, another tool that's not a foot, but that really makes using your piping or your welting foot incredibly handy is this ruler. That it says the name of it is a piping trimming tool, and if you're interested, I can get you the information on where you can get this. I bought mine at Prairie Quilt, and I'm sure they've got more over there at Prairie Quilt. The interesting feature of this is that it has a groove, and if you lay your piping on your fabric in this groove, you can cut along this edge and get a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. Or you can alternatively use this groove and and then cut along this edge, and it'll give you a perfect 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, you can see that in this block that I did. I've got a line of piping here and a line of piping here, and if you flip over, you can see the way that this went together was that I laid this, I trimmed my piping using this tool to 1/4 inch. I laid it along the edge of the fabric, and then I put this piece of sashing over it, and was able to again use my piping foot to sew along the 1/4 inch and get a perfect 1/4 inch seam. So let's see how this works. Here's the piping I just sewed together. I just lay it down. I get my ruler where the piping is riding along in that groove. Okay, you can see that. And then I just take my rotary cutter and cut and slide it up as I go. Oops, didn't cut that spot very good. And there you go, with a perfect piece of piping with a 1/4 inch seam. And then I would take it, lay it on the edge of my fabric. I can show you with this white fabric. And when you get ready to stitch that down, you can actually go back and use your piping foot again to stitch, to again let the piping ride along in the groove of the foot, and then sew out. So I'll show you how to do that next. It's things that, it's not a foot, but I use it all the time. One of the handiest tools that I've come across is the Elmers Glue. And be sure a couple of things, if you do this, to use the Elmers Glue, not the blue or the other Elmer's products, because it's totally washable, and it's made out of a starch product, so that it kind of functions as a starch. That's why it will stiffen up your fabric if you wish, but in this case I want to use it instead of using pins. You'll need a really small tip for your Elmer's Glue. I have a tip here that I got a long time ago that just screws on and screws off to the top of the Elmer's bottle. Okay, I'm going to take the Elmer's glue, and I'm going to run a bead of it. Well, that dried while I was talking, so let me get it open back up here. Okay, I'm going to run a really fine bead of glue right along the edge of the, I guess the selvage edge here of my piping. Okay, and I'm going to take it over, and since I'm going to be starting with this end, let me go get that better. I'm going to lay it right along the edge where I want it to be, over here to my ironing surface. Okay, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to touch it with the iron. Get the rest of this kind of smoothed down. And now the piping is stuck to the fabric, and I don't have to use any pins. I've done piping around an entire quilt this way, so you can turn corners with this Elmer's Glue technique. You can get it all laid out exactly as you want it. If you decide that it's not lined up exactly right, like for example, you decide you didn't like the way you had this laid up on the end, you just pull it off, put you a little bit more glue on, wavy. And put it back, get it lined up exactly like you want it. Touch it with your iron. Once you start using the Elmer's glue this way, you'll discover that there's tons of alternative applications for this. Now, the one key is that you have to have a really, really, really fine bead of glue. If you put more glue than what I did, the glue it will not work this way. So the key is that. Okay, now I'm going to take this back to my sewing machine, and I'll show you how we use the piping foot again to actually sew this to the fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to again make it where my piping is in the groove of the foot. I'll move my foot back to the other side of the piping. Okay, just a little bit more. And notice that with this 1/4 inch that I've cut, I don't really have to use my foot as a guide to get a 1/4 inch seam. But if I want to, I can, because that notch in this particular foot will line up with the 1/4 inch. So then so there you go. When you finish, you've got a perfect piece of piping sewn to your fabric. Obviously, you could have been sewing another seam on top of this, so you'd have another piece of fabric. I didn't go that step because you could obviously see how this would work. But your tools, your foot, and your other tools make the job simple.